also a trustee of PCGT, and all the dignitaries present here. On the behalf of Public Concern for Governance Trust in association with Vaze Model United Nations and Rotaract Club of Thane Midtown and Rotaract Club of Thane Town Wing, we would like to welcome you all to this webinar on the topic Fake News in the Digital Era. Now I would like to introduce the institutions organizing this webinar. Now I would like to first speak about PCGT. Public Concern for Governance Trust is a registered trust founded by Mr. Julio Ribeiro sir, Dr. R.K. Anand sir, and late Mr. B.G. Deshmukh sir to increase public participation and activism towards creating a more transparent and efficient governance system. In order to sensitize and mentor the youth in ethical values, and with an emphasis on good governance, PCGT started the Youth for Governance YFG program in the year 2012. Previously, PCGT has organized dialogues, workshops, and webinars as requested by the campus ambassadors on issues that are related to good governance and involving eminent speakers and role models in different fields to guide and inspire the youth. Now, I would like to speak about Vaze Model United Nations. Our college, VG Vaze College, is a multi-faculty institution established in 1984. Vaze College is the first NAC accredited college in the state of Maharashtra with top 5-star ranking and was re-accredited in 2005 as well as 2012 with A grade. Vaze Model United Nations was established in the year 2017 by the then 12th graders who wished to bring about a change. They wanted to give something back to the college that was shaping them to become the leaders of tomorrow, hence developing a cycle which accelerated their curiosity to learn and explore more politics and international relations. Vaze Model United Nations has expanded tremendously ever since, and now we are back with our fourth edition. I would like to introduce the next organizer, Rotaract Town Wing Club. Rotaract Club of Thane Town Wing is a non-profit organization that has been active since 2014. Run by youth under the age of 30, the club undertakes projects related to social service and personal development. Their aim is to bring about a change in the society while ensuring the upliftment of the community. Now I would like to introduce the fourth partner, Rotaract Club of Thane Midtown revived themselves as the Rotaract Club in 2019. They are a community service organization. They focus on promoting various topics through their projects in mental health, appreciation of all the good, righting the wrongs, entertainment, among others. A tiny part of a huge international community, they are of the outlook of to create a change. Now I would like to call upon Mr. VP Raja sir to speak a few words. So you have the floor.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have Kavita Iyer with us today. PCGT has already been introduced, and PCGT believes in promoting honesty, transparency, and accountability in governance. Our vision is for good governance, trying to contain corruption, uphold and inculcate values, and enhance sadbhavana and fraternity amongst the citizens. And our target audience to achieve all this is basically school children, college students, and we have this program called Kuch Aur, that is something more for high school students and middle school students. And we have a program of Youth for Governance with college students where we invite a number of speakers. We concentrate on the Right to Information Act because that is an important method of ensuring accountability. And we have also started, thanks to some of our past interns, and in particular Mr. Shiva, we have a leadership program. We have campus ambassadors from various colleges, and we have also been organizing national youth parliaments. Now we are very happy to have Kavita Iyer with us because something that is happening so fast. I must confess that I am now 72 years old, But even I'm amazed at the speed at which things are going right as well as going wrong. In fact, a few months ago, I was reading a book called Anti-Social Media: How Facebook Disconnects Us and Undermines Democracy. And I just want to read from the back page of it, just one paragraph. If you wanted to build a machine that would distribute propaganda to millions of people, distract them from important issues, energize hatred and bigotry, erode social trust, undermine respectable journalism, foster doubts about science, and engage in massive surveillance all at once, you'd make something a lot like Facebook. Of course, none of that was part of the plan. Each one of us, when we look back, we were quite happy when Facebook came into existence, when WhatsApp came into existence. But now we realize the abuse of these social media platforms seems to be much more than its use. And everything gets determined by who has the money, who has the money power. So we are understanding these things with some kind of a time delay. So we are all very keen to hear Kavita on the subject. So I won't like to stand between you and Kavita any further. Looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I would like to formally introduce our speaker for the day. Ms. Kavita Iyer has been a prominent name in the field of journalism for over 2 decades now. She was overseeing city news coverage in 2008 when the terror attacks took place. Ms. Iyer ma'am has been in recent years writing on rural distress, agrarian issues, land rights, and the state of the rural economy. She has traveled extensively through Marathwada to report on the drought. She worked on 187 Lives, a special project by the Indian Express documenting the lives of each of those killed in the 7/11 train bombings in Mumbai in 2006. These articles were subsequently compiled into a book in 2007. She also contributed to a book on the 26/11 terror attack published by the Indian Express and Rupa in 2009. She was a National Foundation for India Media Fellow in 2007 and 8 and completed a year-long project studying Dharavi and its people in the backdrop of the proposed multi-crore slum redevelopment project. She has a book to be published very shortly by HarperCollins which focuses on agrarian distress in Marathwada. Now, I would request all the attendees to kindly type in your questions directed towards Tanmay at the date questions. We shall accommodate these questions toward the end of the session. It is recommended for all the attendees to keep the videos on and to keep their microphones on mute at all times. Without further ado, I would like to welcome our speaker, Kavita Iyer ma'am. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm very nervous today because I normally like to do this in person when there is a room full of people and I can see everyone and I can sort of gauge whether what I'm saying is just rambling nonsense or whether it's really getting through. So this is it's very difficult for me to look at a screen and speak, and I don't usually use prepared speeches, so this is going to be a challenge, but I'm also still determined to make this interactive. So at some points, I'll keep asking you questions. So please just type your answers, yes, no, into the chat box. So I'll get a sense of whether we're still on the same page and whether we're all thinking about the same thing. Okay, so just humor me, even if you think it's a stupid question, please type the answer in the chat box, just so that we know that we're all listening, right? So fake news and why it's important and why we must learn to identify it and why we must root it out. Let's start with just typing. Suppose you had to type fake news into your Google search bar right now. What are one of the first things that's going to come up? And I did this exercise maybe about half an hour ago, and here's what I found. The thing right on top is a trend, is a news trend starting from yesterday, of a series of websites and national TV channels also, and their websites, all of them playing a news piece about civil war in Pakistan. Now, you and I know that there is no civil war in Pakistan. In spite of that, top channels, including the Z News website and CNN News 18 website, you will, if you search their websites now, you will spot it easily that they ran stories yesterday saying that there was not just civil war breaking out in Pakistan, but also that there was skirmishes in Karachi and in Islamabad, and that there were people who were injured. Well, none of this was true at all. This was a figment of everybody's imagination based on one person tweeting out sometime yesterday, earlier in the day, that there was fighting on the streets of Kashmir, on the streets of Karachi. What was the basis of that tweet? The basis of that tweet were previous reports saying that a force of the Pakistan Army had arrested a policeman, a top policeman from a provincial police force, in order to try and force him to make an arrest of an opposition leader. But that quickly degenerated into one tweet and then more tweets, and then before you knew it, Indian news media were playing something which was completely fake. Pakistani media, that is mainstream media, as well as Pakistani social media, were having a gala time yesterday, making fun of Indian news media because we had sort of bought into what was clearly clickbait, and news channels had bought into this fake narrative. But I want you to think about what is the timing of this little piece of fake news. Why was it important yesterday and today? Why is it important during this week? What's coming up in India? Do we have elections somewhere? Do we have a pandemic? Do we have inadequate data to back the government's claim that we are on top of the pandemic right now? Yeah, we do. We have all of these. So what did such a discussion about civil war in Pakistan serve? The purpose that was served was distraction. And it didn't last too long because we were called out. The Indian media was called out very promptly by social media and news media in Pakistan. But it was definitely an attempt at distraction. And that is why I want to say that fake news can be misinformation, it can be disinformation. Misinformation is defined as something that one gets incorrect, one can make an error. The best of us can make an error. Top media channels in India can make an error. That is misinformation. But what is disinformation? Disinformation is when they're deliberately peddling it to you, telling you that this is true, when it pretty much is obvious that it is not. And that is disinformation. Let's backtrack a bit now to really talk about what is fake news and how to identify it and why it's important right now. It's not a complex term. Fake news obviously means news that is fake. Any reportage that is pretending to be true, but is actually not based in fact. But fake news can be a broad range of things apart from just incorrect news also. There's a broad range of things that could be fake news. So a piece of news could be fake if it is just completely fabricated, manufactured. There could be a small grain of truth in it and the rest of it manufactured. A good example is the Pakistan Civil War story. Or it could be a story where there is a developing story and the reporter or the writer or the editor is attributing quotes incorrectly or is quoting someone out of context. That would also be fake news. All of us remember, for example, or someone has misinterpreted something that has been said by someone or read by someone. That is also fake news. Misinterpreting facts is also fake news. All of us, I think a very good example that is really funny, and especially for all of you young people, was you remember the discussion about I'm a bounce in connection with the Sushant Singh and Riya Chakravarti case. You remember that there were WhatsApp chats in which somebody said, I'm a bounce. And suddenly all of us thought, and there were news anchors and senior journalists who were trying to tell us that, oh, there's something shady about that. When all of us know that, and all of you know that I'm a bounce simply means chalo cut lete hain because we're done and I'm going to bounce, right? So that's misinterpreting, and that's fake news too. And we have to learn to call it out. So there could be a nugget of truth in a story, but you have to consider news as not fake news only if it is credible. And when I say credible, it means if it is coming from a source that is credible, or if it is coming from an unknown source, if it is verified, if it has data to back it up, if it is substantiated by relevant quotes that are attributed correctly to the right people at the right time and not out of context. That makes news credible and not fake news. Everything else actually does live in that realm of shady, and that is to be seen as fake news. And going forward, we must look at this in very very sharp terms. We must be able to see it in a granular way. And this is important because a lot of things that are, for example, opinion. I can write an opinion piece, which is a completely one-sided piece, and that would not be fake news, but that is my opinion. But if I try to pass off my opinion as a news report, and that is a completely one-sided story without taking into account the version of events as recounted by the opposite side, that would still be fake news too, real news. And it is actually much easier for us to say this is good news because everything else falls in the much larger realm of fake news. The realm of fake news today is much, much larger than news that is genuinely credible and that is coming to you from verifiable sources. Okay. That brings me to why is fake news important? Why is it important for us to understand what is fake news? I'm going to give you some examples of news that is fake and news that is not fake. And I'm going to keep my chat box open, and I hope that just say fake or not fake. Just type that out. I'll read out. I'll make a statement, and you just type whether that seems to be fake news or non-fake news. Okay. So the first thing, this is just these are just statements I'm making. These are not news reports. Okay. I went on a date yesterday. Would that be fake news or not fake? Anybody? Anyone just type in fake, not fake. Okay, no one's responding. Okay, people are saying it's not fake, but how do you know? How do you know it's not fake? I mean, I haven't told you who I went on a date with. I haven't told you where I went on a date. I haven't shown you any evidence of being on a date. So yeah, it's fake. Now we have Tanaya and a couple of others who are saying it's fake. Yeah, it's fake. So there may be a nugget of truth, but unless you're sure that I have given you credible substantiation, you have to just term it as fake because there is no substantiation to it. But also in this case, it was a bit of a googly because it's not really news. If I go on a date, how is it news? So if it's not news, how does it matter if it's fake or not fake? So I can post on my Facebook account today that I went on a fantabulous date and I had the best wine and very good food. It would not be news, so it doesn't really matter whether it's fake or not fake. So let's say I made it up and it's fake, but it's harmless. It hasn't really harmed anyone, except perhaps it's a reflection of my own inflated ego or something. But if I tell you I went on a date and I bumped into someone, or the person I went on a date with told me that an actor who we recently know committed suicide was in fact murdered, and he told me who murdered that person. Would that be fake news or not fake? So, and I'm posting this on my Facebook account. I'm not a journalist. I'm just a regular Facebook user, and I'm posting on my Facebook account that I went on a date with a man who claimed that he knew who had killed a certain actor who all of us think died of suicide. Fake, not fake. Anyone? Fake, yes. Thank you, Rushali. Absolutely fake because total figment of my imagination. It's obviously fake because it comes with zero credibility, it comes with zero verification. I'm not telling you who this gentleman was. I'm not telling you why he claims that he knows the murderer. I'm not even telling you how the murder occurred. This is completely fake news. But this becomes news. I'll tell you why this becomes news. My earlier Facebook post that I went on a date is just I'm just rambling. It doesn't merit being termed as news. But if I say I went on a date and I got some information about a murder, that does become news for multiple reasons. One, there's a major crime involved. I'm talking about a crime. Two, there's a celebrity involved. Three, it's adding to the dialogue that's going on about a case that all of us have been reading about or watching news about. So it does become news at that point of time. So this is very similar to the tweet put out by a gentleman yesterday that said that there's skirmishes going on the streets of Karachi, and it looks like civil war is breaking out. This is very, very similar. It's just that the crime there is a much more serious crime. We're talking about war, we're talking about large-scale violence. But it was one person who made the comment. And in the same way, this is one person making a comment on her Facebook account, claiming that she met someone who told her that this man had been murdered. And there is evidence of that. I'm not presenting the evidence, just like the gentleman on Twitter didn't present any evidence of civil war. I'm not giving you any substantiation. I'm not giving you any further information to make you believe what I'm saying. So it has to be taken as fake news. But this does become news because in the era of social media, when I make a comment, it is amplified so many times over by the power of social media, and therefore, because it includes elements of what is normally considered as meritorious of being called news in mainstream media, it does have all those elements: a celebrity, a crime, something sleazy, something secretive, something that has not yet been unearthed. So it's just a post by a common person, but it becomes news, and it would not be unusual at all for news media channels to spot that post by a Facebooker and go try and investigate it. And those who try and investigate it would say that, okay, it doesn't seem like Kavita has any information, she's just making it up, so it's fake and we're not going to post it. But that's not what the news channels did with the Pakistan story. Obviously, it would have taken only 2 phone calls to figure out that there was no civil war in Pakistan, but they didn't do that. And that is why it is important for you to be able to identify, because the person who is giving you the news is not going to tell you that this is fake, and is also not going to tell you based on what he or she is making that claim. And therefore, it becomes important for you to understand whether or not a news is fake or not fake. There could be certain other kinds of fake news that are actually relevant, and they in fact perform a critical role, a critical artistic role in literature, and that is satire. One of my very favorite websites is The Onion, and another one that I read often is the Horowitz Report. Now these are parody or satire websites, and satire basically plays the role of of constructive criticism in society by artistically presenting fake news in a way that you realize it's fake, and you realize that it's a commentary on something that's happening. There are a lot of examples all over The Onion and Horowitz Report and many other parody accounts on Twitter and other websites which clearly state that these are parody or satire websites, and they do perform an important role, but they are all also fake news. Another good example of this is something again that I would like you to respond to. So in the 1990s, when I was a very young journalist, we would often have reports carried in the newspaper about an encounter, a police encounter of a criminal. So the only information that is absolutely verifiable is the name of the person of the criminal or the alleged criminal who was killed, and perhaps the name of the policeman who was involved either in the investigation or the policeman who led the team of policemen who conducted the extrajudicial killing. In those days, we didn't call it extrajudicial killing because encounter killings were. I mean, it was a different. It was a different time. But everything else about what the reporter would write in an encounter story was pretty much fake, because it would be same in every encounter story. Okay, so every story, every report, and I say story, I mean a news report, because that's the jargon that journalists use. So every encounter story would, what does she read again? I'll tell you what I read again. It's a Horowitz Report and The Onion. Any questions about things that I'm not clear about, please go ahead, and I'm happy to be interrupted. Yeah, so coming back to the encounter story. So the encounter stories were always about ex-criminal was shot dead in X place by a police team of X number of people led by ex-policeman. And everything else was always the same. There would always be two paragraphs that said that the criminal tried to run, and the police team that was giving chase tried to stop him. And the criminal turned around and either opened fire or pulled out a weapon. And in response, in self-defense, the team of policemen opened fire. And in the ensuing crossfire, the gentleman who is the criminal was killed. Right? So this is completely fake, and all of us. I was a deskies in those days. A deskies is someone who sits on the desk, who doesn't go out and bring a report, but who's sitting at the desk of the newspaper office and processing all the reports that come in. So there would be reports from all the various reporters, and the job of the deskie, which is the sub-editors, would be to process this news, to read it, rewrite it, edit it, clean it, give it a headline, give it a strapline, correct the spellings, correct the grammar, also correct the facts, also check the facts. But these are facts that could not have been checked. There is no way that even the reporter would be able to actually verify that that is exactly what happened. So that was the information given to him by his source in the police force, and that is the information that he carried. And that is the information that all newspapers carried in those days about all minor encounters of minor, small-time criminals. If it was a very large, if it was a very prominent person, probably we would do a little more reporting, meet family, meet victims, meet the policemen who were part of the encounter. But that would be on a rare occasion. I think at least about 50-60% of all encounter stories were just a single column story, which said that the encounter was the result, the killing was a result of this man being chased. He turned around and opened fire, and so in self-defense, the police also opened fire, and the man died. Is it fake news or is it not fake news? Oh yeah, it's absolutely fake news. And all of us carried it. All of us carried it. All the newspapers. There was no social media in those days, and it was just accepted practice. And it wasn't fake news itself. Was not such a big thing in the 1990s for us. Doctored news, exactly. Fake news itself was not such a big thing in the 1990s for us to really spend some time thinking about whether this should be the way we report and write the story of an extrajudicial killing. But times have changed now, and I'm glad that they have. A very good example, and this is something that I have spoken about in the past, a very good example of fake news in the recent years that has had wide impact. Now, what happens this encounter is reported, it is poorly reported, lacks details, lacks education, lacks support. What really is the impact of that? There isn't an immediate impact. On a longer term, you would think that this sort of reportage does not speak well of the independence and the power of the media to speak truth to power. But beyond that, it did not cause any specific harm to any large group of people, right? It was badly reported and it should never have been carried, but that was it. There was no impact. But I'll tell you about other examples of fake news that all of us know have had wide impact in society. And one very good example is Pizzagate. Has anyone heard of? Oh, I wish we were in a room because I would have loved to really see your responses when I talk about Pizzagate. So Pizzagate was, as maybe some of you know, end of 2016, that Pizzagate was trending on Twitter. And in 1 month's time, there were a million tweets with the hashtag Pizzagate. Now, what exactly was Pizzagate? It all started on a chat group, on a channel where people can chat with each other. It's called 4chan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct, but that's what it's called. It's called 4, the numeral 4, and CHAN. It's a free speech trail of chat. And it was picked up by Reddit later. Reddit, of course, also all of us know how Reddit works. So first 4chan and then Reddit, they picked up this post about one pizza outlet. It was called Comet, Ping Pong Comet, or Ping Comet Pong, something. It was called. It was a pizza outlet in the Washington area, in the US. And the first post and the first discussions about it were about how the pizza outlet is actually a front for child sexual abuse, and that there are children who are being enslaved in the sex trade, who are being kept imprisoned in the basement of this particular pizza outlet. And it so happens that the owner of that pizza outlet was a Democrat, and he had been known to be he had been dating a senior Democratic leader, or not senior, but a middle-level Democrat leader. And he initially, when the protests began about how his shop was supposed to be the front for a sex scandal which involves sex trade of children, and he initially was very open about it, and it was so bizarre and so far from the truth that he invited the protesters into his outlet, and he said, okay, you can come in and take a look. And he had some modern art on his walls in the interiors of the pizza shop, and the modern art included some images of children. I haven't seen these images, but that's what I read. And it just blew from there into something so big that very soon, in the span of a week or less, we began to read about how Pizzagate was involved in financing through dirty channels money for Hillary's presidential run. And that because this gentleman, the owner, was a Democrat, that there was a connection there, and that's how funds were being channeled. And this was also the time of the Podesta emails. So there was already a spotlight on Hillary and on funding for Hillary. So this sort of added to that. And this became 1 million tweets with the hashtag Pizzagate in a month. You can imagine how big it became. Also, so did this have an impact on voting behavior? We can't say yes or no. There is no evidence to show whether Pizzagate had direct measurable impact on how Americans voted in that election. But it's easy to assess from our own reactions to a story like this of whether or not we would find it something strong enough to sway our opinion of the candidate we are going to vote for. If we are avowed Democrat voters, we would still think twice about putting our vote on something that endorses something as horrible and outrageous as child sex abuse. Even the most avowed Democratic voter would think twice. And especially so because it became a flood of news reports and tweets. If there are two people tweeting about hashtag Pizzagate, it's easy to brush it away as, okay, fake hoga. But if there are 1 million people tweeting about Pizzagate, it is very difficult for laypersons to understand that this is not just fake news, but a coordinated effort at using fake news in order to bring about a specific outcome in a specific event, in this case, the elections. There is a very good example that is parallel to that example that is happening right now in India, or that has just happened right now in India. All of you know of the Tanishq ad, the controversy surrounding the Tanishq ad. What is the Tanishq ad? Very quickly, it was an ad that showed, I'm sure all of you have seen it, in case you haven't, it was an ad that showed a Hindu daughter-in-law and a Muslim mother-in-law, and they were preparing for a ritual for her pregnancy or her pre-childbirth ritual. And it was a ritual that should have been that would normally be seen as a Hindu ritual, and it was being posted in a Muslim household, and the daughter-in-law showing surprise and love. We would have thought in any other time that it was a sweet ad. It said something about the social fabric of India. But the exact opposite happened, and within a week or 2 weeks of the ad releasing, Indian social media managed to get the ad pulled down by a company as large as the Tatas. The Tatas pulled the ad down because they were afraid for the safety of their employees. I mean, there are Tanishq employees in Tanishq stores whose lives and well-being would have been at danger if the company persisted with the ad. So they pulled the ad down. But how did the ad come to be pulled down? And what was it on social media that caused that kind of outrage? So the first posts began on Facebook with very obvious right-wing groups and pages on Facebook saying that that the ad encourages love jihad. For those of you who haven't come across this term before, I'm glad that you haven't come across it, and I wish I didn't have to tell you about it. But unfortunately, it exists, and it is one of the most disgusting trends that has continued for more than a decade now. This whole concept or this idea, complete conspiracy that that Hindu girls are trapped by Muslim men who hide their Muslim identity. And once they have fallen in love, and once the girl or the woman is pregnant, then she's forced to convert before she can marry this gentleman. And that this was being done as a sort of coordinated and planned systematic Islamification of Hindu society. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is no evidence of this whatsoever, despite the fact that some of these reports have been going on for more than a decade. I remember back in early 2002-3 also we read very similar stories about love jihad, it being a campaign in Kerala. And the news always targets states where there are some large percentage, where there is a large percentage of Muslim population. It pains me to even have to talk about it, that this has survived, this trend, this love jihad idea has survived so many years. But unfortunately, it has. And even today, if you Google Tanishq ad love jihad, or if you go onto Facebook and you look for Tanishq ad, you will come across hundreds, thousands of posts saying that the Tanishq ad encouraged love jihad, which is love jihad is of course a term that is coined by the right wing in order to denote this this crazy theory that the large majority of us who are Hindu are going to be somehow Islamified by the minority populations of our country. The fact that this became large enough in our minds and in the minds of a large corporate company for them to have to pull the ad down. They pulled the ad down. Even after they had pulled the ad down, at least 2 different outlets, Tanishq outlets, they put up posts on their glass facades apologizing for the ad. Because they just didn't want trouble. This is the only season where you can get some business because Dussehra is coming, and you don't want to turn away customers who are afraid that there could be a stone throwing incident at your store. Or you don't want to risk someone getting injured, and so they posted, not just took the ad down by the company, but also posted apology notes on their shop fronts. This is shameful. But it happened because of fake news, because this concept of love jihad, while being fake, it touches something inside some of us. What can we call that thing that is inside us that makes us believe if a fake news trend has lasted a decade and more, what is it that makes it last that long? Not just concerted efforts by the right wing to make it survive, but also because there is some resonation. There is some resonation among people like us who somewhere deep inside hold this horrible bias deep within us. And that bias deep inside us makes us look at a Facebook post about love jihad and say, oh, could be possible. Let's not buy any more from Tanishq. Or let me also add my voice to this and say, take down the ad. This is possible. It's possible. That is a sign of your personal bias as a consumer and as a consumer of news. And we must look out for these biases. While we're identifying fake news, we have to also identify personal biases that contribute to the longevity of fake news trends. For example, going back to the Pakistan Civil War story also, there is something within us that tells us that Pakistan mein hai to hota shayad. I mean, Banana Republic, it could just happen there, right? But that's a bias deep inside us, that somehow this is a lesser country and that they don't have democratic institutions, and therefore this is a possibility. It's possibly true. And I want you, especially as young people, to really take a moment to think about your own personal biases that allow fake news to trickle in very deep inside your minds. another very good example of fake news that uh, fake news itself is not new at all. It's just that social media is amplifying fake news to a point now where it has become dangerous to society. But it is not new, and this is not the first time in history that that it is posing the massive danger that it is. Hitler, as you know, not just appointed Goebbels to be his minister of propaganda, but Hitler himself began his career as a propagandist. So after he'd been a soldier through the war years, and subsequently he was in hospital for a while. He, I think, had suffered temporary blindness. There's a lot written about it in the history books and also in mainstream media. You can read a lot about this. So one of the first jobs he got when he finished his hospital stint, etc., was to give speeches on behalf of a particular political party, and he was very good at it because of his style of oratory, and because he was a great orator, he began to become the vessel of propaganda for the political party. And he then later also set up propaganda as a central instrument of his rule, and that is how Goebbels became such a big figure in history. Sorry. I've made a note of a couple of things pertaining to Hitler, which I would like to read out. One, that he himself, in Mein Kampf, his autobiography, he said that the correct use of propaganda is a true art. And in one of the biographies about Hitler, the biographer said that the key to understanding, please listen to this carefully, because this is very relevant to our times and to what we are seeing happening in India right now. Okay, so many years later. The biographer, I'm talking about a biographer who was writing about Hitler. And he said the key to understanding why so many Germans supported Hitler was partly in the Nazis' rejection of rational thinking and their lack of belief in a factual world. I'm going to repeat that. The key to understanding why so many Germans supported Hitler was partly in the Nazis' rejection of rational thinking and their lack of belief in a factual world. Now, I'm not going to tell you why this is relevant today. It's very obvious to everyone why this is relevant today. Who do we know is trying to give us half-truths and misinformation and disinformation? Who do we know is trying to sway our minds to a certain specific outcome? And how is it that we are swayed? I think that part of my question is more interesting to me personally. How is it that we are swayed? That there is among all of us a collective rejection of the idea that science is primary, and that a scientific truth is an absolute truth. And we are all willing to reject that notion because of some deep bias deep within us. And we need to really be able to find that bias inside our hearts and souls and crush it in order to crush the larger bane of fake news that's around us. So this is one of, these are several examples of how fake news has had an impact on, someone saying please send questions. Please do send questions. I'll wrap up in the next 5 or 10 minutes, and then we can actually take some questions. So fake news by itself, if I speak a mistruth, an untruth, it may not have an impact. But when I say something that is, when I post fake news, which can have impact because of its amplification on social media, or because mainstream media picks it up because it appears sleazy enough to attract large viewership, or because it appears juicy enough, scandalous enough to attract large viewership, that is a problem of larger proportions, and the credibility of media as a whole is deeply impacted by the proliferation of fake news and the concept and the whole common practice now of mainstream media accepting fake news as the truth without any independent investigations of their own. There have been several instances of how fake news is used. I've given you examples of political and religious and social impact of fake news. One other important use of fake news and propaganda is also for commercial interests and commercial gains. And a very good example is in December 2019, a website, a Brussels-based website called EU Disinfo Lab. You can write that down if you like. It's called eudisinfolab.com. They found out that there were 265 websites, and this I'm talking about 2019. They found out that 265 websites based across the world in 65 countries were together in a coordinated way, attempting to sway India-related policy making by EU countries by the use of fake news. Now, the Indian government was nowhere found to be involved in this, but these websites were coordinated and controlled by one single Indian company, and they were able to give the name of the Indian company. So this is propaganda for commercial gain. So the attempt that they were making was to try and push business into business in a certain sector into a certain country, in this case, India. So that is propaganda for commercial gain, equally reprehensible and equally condemnable by all of us, and also dangerous because it's more difficult to spot. When you spot political propaganda, it's easy to call it out. It's much more difficult when corporates who are using extremely intelligent people to write and to administer this propaganda from across the world in different countries simultaneously. Difficult to point out, difficult to prove as being fake news, difficult also to prove that there was a coordinated effort in order to bring about a certain specific commercial outcome. There are a lot of these websites that are compiling these news, these compilations of fake news that have together tried to have a certain coordinated effort for policy, and I'm happy to share those with you also. Another interesting thing that I read, in fact, just today, was that through 2019, there were several fake news stories on Facebook that got millions of page views. So Facebook, in fact, put this data out itself. It said that there were 2 billion. So you know that Facebook is the largest social media network in the world. 1/4 of the world's population is on Facebook or is a Facebook user. That's 1/4 of the world's population is about 2 billion people. And there were 100 fake news stories last year in 2019 that received 150 million page views. And these were a lot of them were pertaining to American politics, because again, this is an election year for them. So there was a lot about Trump, there was a lot about Biden. One interesting one was that, this is not always a right-wing, I know I talk about that a lot, but fake news is not always a right-wing effort. The other side is equally complicit. So one of the interesting fake news posts which received these millions of page views on Facebook last year was a post that said that Donald Trump's father was a KKK member. KKK, as you know, is the Ku Klux Klan, extremely right-wing white supremacist group. It also, another example, good example, was that was this whole also got a lot of page views, and it was a post that got amplified by several other simultaneous posts that were similar in nature. It said that Nancy Pelosi was taking away government money meant for Social Security into the impeachment proceedings. Again, it was not true. There was no evidence whatsoever, but it got a lot of traction. And because it got a lot of traction, there was a lot of feeling among American citizens that the whole impeachment proceedings was only political propaganda by the Democrats. Again, propaganda, fake news in order to achieve a certain political outcome. Very last couple of comments before we open up for questions. How to identify fake news. I'm also going to talk about why it is important for young people to identify fake news, much more than for me or people who are older than I am, but I'll come to that later. First, how to identify fake news. When you see anything, whether it's on your WhatsApp group, your family WhatsApp group, your college WhatsApp group, your school former students WhatsApp group, building society WhatsApp group, your Facebook pages, Facebook groups, personal Facebook accounts, everything. Twitter, even if it's on the timeline of people, even if it's on your timeline because of people who you normally trust. Even then, every news report that you find, before you retweet, share, forward, please check whether it is fake news. How will you do that? You'll first make a visual assessment. When I say visual assessment, look carefully at the URL. Does it look like it's a credible news portal? If it's an identity that is normally credible, you see it says the Indian Express, you see it says the Hindu, you know for a fact that this is a credible news source. But read the URL carefully. Sometimes the URL appears to be Indian Express, but is in fact Indian Express with a third S, or could be anything. So please watch out for that carefully. So visual assessment also would include, is the photograph with the story appearing to be manipulated in some way? Are there grammatical errors which are not common for a well-placed, well-established news media organization? Check for the web domain, check the spelling of the web domain. Also, quick tip, if you find something that says .com, .co, please double check, because .com, .co or something that ends with .lo, those often tend to be fake news sites. So look for those carefully. For example, a very good example of fake news, a fake news site is abcnews.com.co, which is one of the top fake news sites in the world right now. Also look at the site for other news stories carried by that site. Do they seem credible? Do they seem acceptable? Do they seem to be well verified, well substantiated? That's a good indication of whether this particular news story you're looking at is fake or not fake. Look at the message that the story is giving you. Is it one-sided? Is it partisan? Is it propaganda? Look for that. Look for the message you'll get. Not all propaganda is going to claim to be news. Sometimes propaganda is just propaganda, but sometimes propaganda is peddled to you as news. So look for that carefully. You'll know that only when you read the story. Do not share, retweet, post, repost on your own pages until you have verified whether something is actually not fake news. Twitter has come up just last week or maybe 10 days back with a new feature that tells you when you're about to forward something. Twitter tells you, have you read it, or are you just forwarding? I mean, when you're retweeting. So when you're about to retweet, Twitter gives you a little post there that says, have you read the story? You can now read the story before you retweet. It's encouraging you to check for yourself whether news is credible before you share it. Because the problem with fake news really is the amplification by social media. And if each one of us stops amplifying, there will be immediate impact, right? And final question on whether it is fake news is it clickbait? All of us know what is clickbait. If it is clickbait, it is likely to be fake news. Is it asking you to click on it with a sleazy headline? Is it asking you to click on it with salacious details about a celebrity? Is it asking you to click on it with something that you heard as a rumor a couple of days back? Do not click, do not open, and definitely do not share. Clickbait is purely for commercial interests of companies that gain from clickbait. And finally, last sentence before we take questions. Why is it important for young people? Why am I so keen that all of you should understand and know what is fake news and be able to identify it? Because going forward, news itself is changing. As Mr. Rajesh said when he started today, he said things are changing so rapidly today. It's amazing. It's difficult to keep pace. When I began to consume news as someone your age or younger than you, there was only one source of news, and that was the newspaper. We had to wait in the morning for the morning newspaper, and we had to wait in the evening because we also had an evening newspaper. No one waits for the newspaper for news anymore. Then things changed a little bit, and we began to wait for the evening news bulletin. Then 24-hour news channels came. Now, how do you consume news? Do you wait for anything at all? No, you just pull out your phone and you check Twitter, you check WhatsApp, you check Reddit. And you know what's happening around you. You check the news that is hyperlocal, you check the news that is international. Everything is available to you at a moment's notice, updated real time, and you take pleasure in retweeting because you want the world to be aware as well. So please, all of you, and the way you will consume news going forward is that mainstream media, whether it is newspapers, magazines will all slowly die out because the demise of print is imminent. And you will, I mean, so many publications are now entirely online publications. You will be consuming news only on medium.com. On medium.com, you'll have a range of publications that you can then pick from, or maybe you'll consume news through Patreon. These are emerging and evolving as I speak. And by the time we speak together next year, by the time we converse again next year, things would have changed much more. That is the pace at which news consumption and news design is changing. And therefore, it is much more important that you be able to identify fake news, because I don't think that my parents are going to be capable of reading news on medium.com and figuring out whether it could possibly be fake. So that responsibility is going to be entirely on the shoulders of the young generation. And on that note, thank you for having me, and thank you for listening patiently. And I also want to say thank you to PCGP, thank you to Mr. Raje. Special thanks to Mr. Ribeiro for being very, very gracious with me while offering me this chance to speak. And thank you to Shivam, thank you to Vazir College, thank you to also the Rotaract partners today. Thank you, everyone. We can take some questions if we still have some time. You can just post your questions here, or one of you can send them to me together, however you please.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. I have the questions. I'll be asking you them. Before that, I would there's a question from my end.
Sure.
So, ma'am, we see a lot of fake news being forwarded on WhatsApp, and what happens usually is we consume the news and we forget that it is fake news. Later, there are other people telling us that it was fake news, but until then we have propagated that to a huge audience. So how do we combat that?
That's because you didn't identify it correctly, right?
Yeah.
Did you apply your mind before you forwarded it? You read it, you assumed it to be true, and you forwarded it before checking for yourself whether it is possibly fake. And that is something that it's now become a tick for us, right? I take the phone, I see news, and I hit retweet. It's become almost a habit for all of us, and that's the same to those of you who are very active on WhatsApp groups. That someone forwards you something and you broadcast that on 10 groups that you're on, and those 10 groups have 200 members each. So you're amplifying something in a matter of minutes, and there is no way for you to undo it. You cannot post on each of those groups, hey, I'm sorry, I take it back. Because by then, each of those 200 in each of those 10 groups that you've been on have already similarly reposted to their 10 groups with 200 people each, right? So because you can't take it back, you have to be applying your mind before you hit retweet. And therefore, the only way to identify it is to consider all news as fake until you have read it and confirmed for yourself using those 5 or 6 points I gave at the very end to figure out whether this is fake news or not. If you have the slightest doubt that it is fake news, use one of the fake news websites and portals that are very active and doing excellent work right now. Alt News is one of my favorites. I read Alt News every day. There are lots of them. There's Fact Checker. And there are so many of them. There are international and Indian ones, all equally good. There's also technology available on Google that's basically cross-referencing an image. When you find an image, you can actually feed it into Google and ask Google simply whether is this image real, and the system will be able to tell you that this particular post of what seems to be violence in Pakistan today is actually a photograph of a riot that happened in Turkey 10 years back, for example. Okay, so technology has advanced, and we have to be able to use the technology correctly. Just today, Alt News has put out a post that says very clearly that we are being fed misinformation about, or we are being fed deliberate disinformation about our COVID numbers, because it's taking a partial look at only some data. So you're getting some data selectively, and you're not getting all the data when leaders are telling you that India is on top of the pandemic right now and that we more or less controlled it. So if you just look at Alt News, you get not just what came to you on WhatsApp, but 20 other things also. So when you get that on WhatsApp tomorrow, you will already know. So please use the Fact Checker website. They're doing a fantastic job, and please also subscribe to them and help support them.
Ma'am, thank you, ma'am. The next thing that is here is more of a comment than a question, and it is by Miss Komal. So she has to say that I'm sorry, Kunjal. Can one believe that almost all the fake news is a coordinated effort and is just propaganda? Ma'am, what would be your take on this?
Kunjal is asking if can we consider all news as being fake news and propaganda? Is that the question?
Yes, ma'am.
No, all news is not necessarily fake news, and not all fake news is propaganda. It could just be for different reasons. So, for example, some propaganda could be for political gain. Some fake news could be for economic gains. A lot of fake news on websites is just purely clickbait, which is commercial. It's a very simple clickbait is a very simple method of making you click on something, and every time you click on something, then a company that is posted that ad is paying that extra X dollars to that company which is posting the clickbait, right? So it is purely ad views, and you're basically getting some company rich by allowing yourself to be pulled in by clickbait. So fake news can be simply clickbait, which doesn't have a lot of great political impact. It could be political propaganda, which does have genuine political social impact. Have to watch out for that for what is propaganda. Fake news could also be economic gains for some companies. So it could be fake news that has economic. It could also be to incendiary posts in order to promote enmity and hate, which is also a lot of what we saw with Tanishq, for example, or Love Jihad, for example. Fake news is also often to create enmity among groups for political gains for some people. It could incite violence, again for political gains for some groups.
Ma'am, so the next question, the last question that we'll be taking is by Vrishali ma'am. So considering the current situation where the people in India are easily polarized, does this help in circulating fake news, and also does polarization has the effect that the people don't mind to recheck the news whether it's fake or not?
Yeah, of course. Goes without saying that we all hold this bias within us. Unfortunately, we've come to a point where we are such a deeply polarized society that all of us have our own biases that we are holding either consciously or subconsciously. And those of us who have subconscious biases should be that much more careful about our biases, and we have to find a way of identifying our biases, because our biases are exactly what help propagate and amplify fake news. Without those biases, we would not be buying in so easily to a fake narrative. We buy into a fake narrative because there's something within us that wants to believe the fake news, and that's dangerous.
All right, thank you. It was very insightful, and it was really amazing that you, without asking a lot of questions, you're already in your.
Completely agree with them. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. It's my privilege to propose a word of thanks. First of all, I would extend my sincere gratitude to Ms. Kavita Iyer, ma'am. It was indeed a privilege to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today, ma'am. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to everyone who took the time and effort to be with us today. It gives us great pleasure to have such an enthusiastic audience. I would also like to mention some of our dignitaries without whom this event wouldn't have been possible, our PCGT trustees. I would like to thank Mr. Julio Ribeiro sir and Mr. VP Raja sir and other PCGT trustees for such a progressive and constant effort. Further, I would also like to thank our principal Dr. B.B. Sharma sir, our vice principal Dr. Preeta Nilesh ma'am. I would also take a moment to thank both the road track clubs and our mentor Ms. Sangeeta Aher ma'am, Head of Political Science Department of Junior College. Last but not the least, Mr. Shivam Jain Kakaria sir, who has been constantly there for us throughout the event and contributed generously in every step of the way. Once again, I thank you all for having spared your precious time for all of us and for joining us today. Hope to see you all in our next webinars too.